Is the SEC about to make its move? Welcome to the Voice of College Football. This is where we break it down each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis, not because of me, but because of you. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We've got the phone lines open all night at 860-499-3332. We will post the number here shortly, 860-499-3332. Before we get going, we want to remind you that you can simply hit the like button to help us build the channel. Please hit the like button before you get settled. Also consider shopping Amazon. When you do, use the link in the description section that we provide in all the videos. So just go to the description section, help us build the channel by shopping on Amazon using our link that does not cost you a penny and is the same shopping experience. All right, let's get to the matter at hand. It is the SEC against the world. It is the SEC against the college football world, apparently. Key points here. We first know that the SEC holds its annual coaches meetings every May in Destin, Florida. This has been going on for years and years and years and years, and more so than any other convergence of college coaches for any conference, this one has produced the most attention. And it will produce even more attention this time around than probably ever before for a couple different reasons. One, for those of you who love the drama, who love the possible trash talking to continue to ensue. Who's going to take the next punch? Who's going to take the next jab? Of course, Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban will have to at least be in the same room together, even if they don't speak, even if they don't maintain any kind of eye contact. They will be forced to be in the same room together for 2 or 3 days in Destin, Florida. I don't necessarily know if they'll be sharing a cold beverage together or taking any moonlight walks on the beach, but they will be in the same room discussing college football. Maybe not directly, but they'll be in the same room. All right. That's the drama in the immediate, but the more pressing issues are the ones affecting the landscape of college football that were discussed across the internet. And I took my information from ESPN and Pete Thamel. And here were the key points. Again, it's every May, and it's going to be next week in Destin, Florida. The SEC coaches get together to discuss the issues facing the league and college football. Of course, Greg Sankey is going to be there, SEC commissioner, and other SEC officials. All right, first and foremost, we've got a situation in which Oklahoma and Texas are joining the SEC. They will start play in 2025. 2025? I got to think that this is going to be moved up, this date of entry. Are we going to play football seasons in 2022, 23, and 24? We've already played one, knowing that Oklahoma and Texas will not be joining or belong for the Big 12. I just don't see it. I've got to think that that timetable is going to be moved up, but as of today's sources, most notably ESPN, it is still 2025 for Texas and Oklahoma. I would bet on that date being moved up. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey was not happy with the talks that ensued after the 12-team college football playoff proposal was unveiled last summer. Many of you weren't happy. I wasn't happy. I'm not a proponent of the 12-team playoff because of the issue with buys. But other than that, I thought it was a good proposal, and it seems to be where we're headed and need to be heading. But who do you blame? Do you blame the Big Ten and Kevin Warren, or the new commissioner of the ACC who replaced John Wolford? Unfortunately, can't remember the man's name right this second, or the new Pac-12 commissioner, George Kliavkoff. Regardless, they got in the way of a new playoff format being implemented. And so what we now know is that while there will probably be a new playoff format eventually, it's not going to come until 2026. We know that 2026 isn't that far away, but it seems like forever. There should have been a playoff format, a new playoff structure that was agreed upon between the commissioners. So whatever goodwill culminated and was brought together during these 5 commissioners and these 5 conferences, and all 10 conferences to a certain extent, facing the 2020 pandemic season that was completely abolished and destroyed during these negotiations, in which it appears as though the Big Ten, more so than the other conferences, stood in the way of a 12-team playoff being implemented. Why? I don't necessarily get it. If there's a league to benefit from a 12-team playoff based on previous models, based on going through the history and matching the season and the results to the 12-team playoff proposal, yes, the SEC is going to benefit, but the Big Ten will benefit even more. It's had those layers of teams just below the cut line for the playoff, more so than any other league. So SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey is not reportedly upset, mad, angered, bitter over the results and the inability to get together on a proposal, but he has flat out stated it. Not happy with what's going on. Greg Sankey's a smart man. He's a forward-thinking man, and he understands that his league is the most dominant financially, strategically, and on the football field. Only the Big Ten can in any way come close to matching the SEC in any of those categories, and that gap is widening with the inclusion of Oklahoma and Texas. This new revenue share between the 16 teams in the SEC with Oklahoma and Texas on board is ridiculous. Over $90 million per team, whereas our latest reports are in the mid to high 60s for each team in the SEC and each team in the Big Ten. And it would surprise some people that the Big Ten has actually made more revenue the past 2 football seasons per team. But that's done. That's out the window, and we'll see if the Big Ten responds. In the meantime, the Big Ten has basically responded by creating a roadblock to a new playoff format. Okay. I made the suggestion when it appeared early in the 2020 football season, with the Big Ten deciding not to play at that point and then looking foolish because it did eventually decide to play after it said it would definitely not play. And at that point, the Pac-12 was not playing and the Big 12 was up in the air and the ACC was still figuring out what to do, but quickly followed the SEC. But for a short period of time, I suggested the SEC could save college football. The SEC could be the only league here that, because of the past championships won, at that point it was 10 of the past 14. Now it's 12 of the last 16, that the SEC, not because I would deem it legitimate, but because of perception of dominance and actual dominance in reality, could have staged the college football season in 2020 and been, number one, the savior of the sport, and its champion still be considered by many to be a legitimate champion, having only played the rest of the SEC. It didn't come to that, but the SEC would have been the one league that could have pulled that off and had it be viewed as basically legitimate. And now it appears as though here we are a couple football seasons later that the SEC is contemplating doing just something similar to that. Whether it's going to pull it off, whether it's going to follow through on this, but the SEC has admitted to discussing different playoff models within the conference that would lead either to a national champion, a champion of the SEC that would not play any more games, or would lead to an SEC champion that would simply not participate in the playoff with the other 4 conferences or the other 9 conferences, but would simply serve up a champion to play the champion of everyone else. How viable is that? How legitimate is that? How feasible? What would that do to the rest of college football? What would that do to the fabric of the sport? We can certainly discuss with you, as well as a new SEC scheduling format. There were 2 basic models presented in this ESPN article and elsewhere online today among the reported 40 that Greg Sankey says that they're considering. All right. Again, the phone lines are open. I do appreciate everyone being here to talk SEC football and really, as you well know, college football. We will not shut this down just to the SEC. We discuss college football here on the Voice of College Football every day with you. So this is our topic because this would present seismic changes to the sport if implemented. But of course, we'll talk about anything on your mind concerning college football. Wide receiver Marcus Washington, formerly of Texas, has transferred to Nebraska as of the last 24 hours. And just in the last 2 days, Nebraska also picked up a defensive lineman, Stephon Wynn, formerly of Alabama. Check out our live shows that we presented tonight from Iowa and also Nebraska on those respective channels. If you're not aware, we do have 25 team channels. I am reminded from time to time that many of you watch us on a regular basis and check out the videos on the main channel that have no idea that we've got team channels. So this is not everything right here at the Voice of College Football, right here on the main channel. So tonight we are simulcasting across as many SEC channels as which we were allowed to by our StreamYard application, and that would be 8. And also future SEC members in Oklahoma and Texas. So once again, the phone lines are open at 860-499-3332. Let's take our first call of the night. I will be posting the number, so look out for it if you don't know it. 860-499-3332. Our first call of the night. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, Mark. It's the real MVP. How you doing this evening?
I am doing well. Did you take all of that in? That's a lot. And that would just be either just simply huge changes to be processed by all of us or cataclysmic possibly to the sport.
Oh yeah. I think this is not going to happen. I think this is just a negotiating ploy on Greg Sankey's part because he is the only commissioner that can threaten to leave college football and actually be taken seriously. And I think the reason he's doing it is because he wants to get rid of the word guaranteed playoff spots.
So you know
what
this.
do you think about that?
Wait a minute. You know that he doesn't want... Okay, it's your theory. Well, if there's a playoff expansion, that is going to include the guaranteed playoff spots, regardless of what Greg Sankey thinks. I just can't imagine there being a 12-team playoff that's going to continue to be determined by solely the College Football Playoff Committee without any structure. Right now, they basically have no structure. If you think about it, they could select 4 teams from the same league if they wanted to. They can do whatever they want. The proposals that went out that we all read through last summer guaranteed conference champions to be included. Now, we know that was voted down, that was not approved across the board, and the 5 commissioners could not come to an agreement on that. But I just can't imagine that Greg Sankey, of course, it would be within his better interests as the leader of the SEC to not have automatic bids because his champion is in anyway. And at that point, it's going to be 2 or 3 other teams as well. But I'm trying to think that he would really care one way or the other.
Oh, absolutely, he would care. He wants the SEC to be on top.
Well, of course,
I'm sure there's an abundance amount of money.
But why would he? No, why would he care about automatic bids?
Well, because there are teams in the SEC that are going to be better than the teams that make the playoffs that aren't going to get in.
Not in a 12
if you have guaranteed playoff spots. Oh, maybe not 12, but 8. It's possible for 8.
Well, I do think that if you go through an 18 playoff and you don't make it automatic conference championships based on the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, if they stay with that model, which I would expect them to, you don't have too much of that. You have the Pac-12 being left out. You don't have anybody else being left out.
So if you have 5 at-large bids, okay, and then 3, which one's better, Texas A&M or the Big 12 champion?
You mean 5
or the
automatic bids, not 5 at-large, 5 conference champions.
Yeah, automatic, sorry.
Gotcha.
I think if Texas A&M, Ole Miss, I think they deserve a more inclusion in the playoff because they are a better team than the Pac-12 and the Big 12 champion. And I think from Greg Sankey's point of view, he understands that, he knows it, and he wants the best teams in the playoff.
Are you talking about like specifically last year or every year?
Oh, I think more years than not, the third best team in the SEC is going to be better than some conference championships going forward.
Going forward. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that point. I think it's going to be close. I would argue that the Big 12 and Pac-12 champions were both better than Texas A&M and Ole Miss last year. Those are the 2 teams you brought to the table. But yeah, there will be times that the SEC's third place team will be better than the Pac-12 champion unless things change dramatically.
Right. And if you're Greg Sankey and you understand this, then why wouldn't you threaten anything and everything at the negotiating table to try to get the best for your conference?
And we have to also understand better based on what? What are we basing this on?
More SEC teams in.
No. The third place team in the SEC is better based on what? What are we evaluating? What are we using to evaluate?
Well, it's subjective because they haven't played on the field, obviously. But I think from the pedigree and the polling from the AP, the college football, I think it's about even between the third best SEC team and the Pac-12 and Big 12 champ. And I think it's going to be that way going forward.
Well, whoever held up this this proposal from going through, it would be foolish of them. Let's say you're right, and let's say Greg Sankey gets what you think is his way. Then it was certainly a bad move by, let's say, the Pac-12 to boycott or get in the way of this proposal going through, because they would have had Greg Sankey was on board to push through this proposal that included the 5 conference champions to receive automatic bids.
Well, I know he was upset with the way negotiations deteriorated. So sometimes when you got all the power at the negotiating table and things don't go your way, you're going to extrapolate more than you wish just to prove a message.
So let's say worse comes to worse.
No.
And you know, the SEC does decide to play its own game, to take its ball and go home and just play a regional sport. There is there's large enough territory there for the SEC to thrive and succeed and make money for everybody involved, and for people to watch on TV in that part of the country. I don't know how many people are going to watch in Ohio or Nebraska or California are going to watch SEC football if it has no connection to the rest of the sport, but they'll be able to shoot. There are local businesses and regional businesses that thrive and succeed, and people make millions of dollars. So they would be that. And if that's what he's aiming to do, I think that would be short-sighted and not good for the sport. But if that's what he wants to do, and I don't think that's what he wants to do, but they could certainly operate as their own entity, but it would not be good for college football.
Oh, I didn't say it was good for college football, but Greg Sankey ain't going for what's best for college football. He's going best for what's his conference. And sometimes what's best for his conference isn't aligned with the rest of the sport.
I don't think it's best for his conference. I think he can pull it off. I think it can be done, but I don't think it's best for his conference to play by themselves and shut off half of America, more than half of America.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's posing this option on the table to get the others to come listen to him more.
Well, yeah,
I think
he's
it's
getting people's attention.
Tactic.
He got my attention. Not that matters, but he got, he should be getting the attention of everybody else, because as you stated, they could pull it off. They have enough teams now, and they have enough quality programs, money, and everything else required. If they really wanted to spite the rest of the sport, they could pull it off and survive to some degree.
Oh, yeah. Now, does that mean I would like for this to happen? No. I think it would hurt the sport overall. And I want to see, as an SEC fan, I like saying we're the best every year. And it's going to be impossible to say, hey, we're the best when we don't play anybody else outside of the SEC. Because I don't imagine the Big Ten, the ACC, and the others will want to schedule us if they're, we've just kind of shunned them away.
Well, it wouldn't be good for either side, because the legitimacy of your championship goes down the drain. If you are
right,
the Big Ten, the SEC, or the ACC, and the Big 12, and the rest of the conferences, because of the dominance of the SEC, regardless of how good those teams look, there would always be a question. That champion, okay, you didn't play the SEC. And for the SEC, simply playing within its own league, even though it's been the best conference now for 15 or 20 years, not playing a program outside of the league it would just tear the sport apart. It would just be ugly. I'm not saying it wouldn't survive. The sport would survive to some degree, but it would be wouldn't be something that I would care to try to.
It's a mess.
Comment on.
Well, Mark, I think that's all I got for you today. So hopefully this doesn't go through, and hit the like button, guys. Thanks, people to hit the like button, more people that'll come watch the stream.
There you go. Appreciate it, man. Have a good night.
No problem.
All right. We will keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark.
George.
Yeah, I had to turn down the show. How you doing?
I'm good. What have you been up to?
I've been working lately. When I work, I get pumped, man, because I don't work every day. And when I do, I get all this adrenaline. It's like Christmas morning, I can't go to sleep. I'm just excitable. I love this shit. I love work.
Well, we need more of you in this country right now that like work.
I know. I don't even complain anymore. When I go somewhere and they get my order wrong, I'm just glad somebody came to work, period. I just take it and shut up, Okay, in the chat, Joey Foster likes Jimbo Fisher. because he says he supports West Virginia. He's there several times a year, eating at local restaurants and supporting local sports teams. Never seen Saban here at all, so he can suck it. I'll give Jimbo Fisher credit for that, but I guarantee you there's an ulterior motive. He's recruiting. He has ulterior motives. But still, that's good, Joey. And these are just my opinions, you know. It's not a fact or nothing.
Your opinions. You're reading everybody else's opinions. What's your opinion tonight, George?
I don't like Jimbo. I never did. I hope he loses every game. I thought he was a bum at Florida State.
Well, that's why you don't like him.
I think he's the biggest cheater. I think he's the biggest cheater in college football. I think he would do anything to win a national championship. And he's talking shit about St. Nicholas.
Is there any reason besides him coaching at Florida State that you don't like Jimbo Fisher?
No, because I loved Bobby Bowden. He was a cool dude.
Okay. Yeah, Jimbo doesn't do himself any favors the way he presents himself. He's a little out of control. Those kind of guys don't demand a whole lot of respect.
That was a bad follow-up to Bobby Bowden, man. They have such a classy program. Look at the way he left Florida State. He destroyed their college football team for decades the way he left.
Well, no, he can't be blamed for all of that. He didn't leave them in the best place.
You're right.
But
you're right. They got a messed up football program.
They still had good football players there and facilities and resources. You know, it shouldn't have been just burned to the ground for 5 or 6 straight years after him.
Kirby's visor said Nick Saban will put 100 on Jimbo this year. That's funny, man. I'd take a 1-point win if I'm Nick. Anyway, did you hear about the Texas A&M player coming out and putting Texas A&M on blast today?
Well, was this the player that decommitted from Texas A&M to choose Bama? Is that who we're talking about? Holstein?
I didn't read the whole article because your show came on. I could go look at it right now. I have 2 things, but he said they are threatening his NIL money. And Jimbo said NIL money wasn't a consideration in this recruiting class. Jimbo Fisher is purporting that he went 8-4 every year forever, and that all of a sudden he has the greatest recruiting class in the history of college football, but money's not in play here. That's what Jimbo says. And that's a lie. Money is involved.
Well, it is
NIL
a lie.
Money is involved.
He should not state it that way because everybody knows that that's a joke. He should state it in a way that we are following all the rules, all the protocols. We're doing everything that's right. But NIL is on the table for everyone, and we're utilizing it to the best of our ability, and we're playing by the rules. That's how he should state it. Simply, it's a joke for him to completely deny it and run from it. He shouldn't do that because that's laughable.
Right. Oh, Mark, I turn 62 next month, and Social Security called me. I'm going on Social Security.
You're going to kick right in at 62. Okay, you're going to take it because you could hang around for what, 3 more years and go at 65 and make more money, right?
I don't have an option. I'm on SSI right now. And when you're on SSI, they force you to take it because I'm getting $841 a month right now, like everybody on SSI is. Guess how much I get for my retirement? $686 a month for life. You can't even be a respectable homeless person with $646 a month. You'd be stealing lawnmowers or something.
With this inflation rate, that's going to look like about $300 in a few months.
It cost me that much, pretty much for gas and electric. Yeah, not gas in my house, gas in my car and my electric bill. That would eat up $686 a month. Anyway, I think there's a set off. I think I'm still going to get the 841, but I'm just saying, who knows how this world works? You know, figure it out as you go.
Yeah, well, Social Security's been bankrupt forever. We just don't know when they're going to pull the plug on the whole thing.
I know. I started getting it 10 years ago on purpose.
Yeah.
Because I knew if I wait, I'm never going to get a dime. And I feel sorry for anybody who's in their 40s. You know, it's like I don't see any hope at all.
Well,
It's
George,
just
we're going to
barely
lose our
hanging
college
on.
football audience here pretty soon. Anything else concerning the grand old
Football
game?
related. All right. Hey, listen, this is kind of football related.
Kind of.
I got a letter
Yeah.
from Social Security, and they told me they're going to garnish my $686. And I went, whoa, wait. I called them up, and they said it's back child support. So I called the child support people, and I said, whoa, I don't owe you nothing. And they said no, and they sent me a printout shows I've been paid off since 2017. And so now they're going to inform Social Security. They were going to garnish my $686.
Well, George, we feel for you. I'm still trying to find the college football connection there. All right, man. We're here for you. Give us a call back.
Utah.
Here soon.
Go Gators
Yes.
in Utah. Love you guys.
You can put it all double or nothing on the Gators against Utah. See you, George.
Love it.
All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good.
George out here advocating for more socialism. Man did manual labor his whole life, and now he's mad the government.
I was going to be asking for a name here pretty soon, but I think I got it. How's it going, Lou?
Yeah. Right. How about take care of your own self and don't rely on the government? But anyway, you know what I wanted to talk about is non-con games.
Yes.
Can I do that for a second?
Sure, you can.
What do you think about Oklahoma versus Nebraska?
This season? I think it's
this coming season.
Yeah, not as a concept of them playing. Got you. Well, they played a really good game last year. Nebraska should be better quarterback, number one team in the transfer portal in the Big Ten. I think it could be an interesting game. I still think Oklahoma's better, but could they lose in Lincoln? Absolutely.
Yeah, right now it's like a 3-point spread or something, very low.
Wow.
So let me ask you this. If Nebraska's in the Big Ten, is that right?
They are.
And Oklahoma's in the Big 12?
Yes.
Okay. If Nebraska beats Oklahoma, is that a win against the SEC?
In my book, no.
Of course it's not. Ohio State is 5-12 against the SEC. Right?
Yes. I believe that's correct. That sounds right. Yeah.
That is correct. So all of these nitwits running around claiming Ohio State victories against teams 50 years ago when they weren't in the SEC is not a win against the SEC, is it?
No.
Exactly.
Not
So
necessarily
Ohio State
50
is 5
years
and 12
ago.
against the SEC all time. Ohio State is 5-12 against the SEC all time, 2-11 in bowl games, right?
That sounds about right. Yeah. Again, I haven't
That is
checked the
right.
numbers, but I know it's
these-
close.
Well, you got a lot of
Yep.
nitwits in your comment section, Mark, that are claiming Ohio State wins against the SEC because they beat teams 50 years ago when they weren't in the SEC. And Texas A&M or Missouri 40 years ago is not a win against the SEC, is it?
No.
No, it's not. That's absolutely ridiculous.
They are wins against
Right?
current SEC teams.
But it's not wins against the SEC.
No.
I mean, okay, if Nebraska beats Oklahoma this year, in 10 years, does that count as a Nebraska win against the SEC? No.
No, it's not a win against
That's a
the
Nebraska
SEC.
win against the Big 12.
But if you were going to show, let's say we were going to show a chart, a graph 10 years from now and show Nebraska's record against all the teams in the SEC, that would show up as a win
But that's
against
not what I
Oklahoma
asked you.
as a
But
current
that's not what
member
I
of
said.
the
I
SEC.
said wins against the SEC, not wins against teams currently in the SEC. Wins against the SEC.
No, you have to.
Ohio State is 5-12. I don't know why that makes y'all so mad. I don't know why y'all have to do human pretzels and try to bend yourselves into corners in a circular room rather than just say, hey, for whatever reason, the SEC has completely owned and dominated us since 1930.
Now, come on, Uncle Lou.
Why can't you just say that?
You know why.
Ohio State's been playing SEC teams since 1930. They're 5-12 all time.
Okay, Uncle Lou. You know
So,
why it
I don't
bothers
understand.
people.
Look, Ohio
You know
State
why
is
it
one of the
bothers
best
people.
programs of all time.
You know college football fans just as well as I do. You know why it irritates them, because do you want to have a negative stat about Georgia thrown in your face? That doesn't mean it's not valid.
I love talking negative stats about Georgia. It drives the views through the roof.
Well, that's true. That's true. That's a good point there.
So,
but you personally don't want to hear.
I also live in reality.
You didn't want to hear about 1980.
Georgia doesn't have any good wide receivers not named A.J. Green. Like, okay, what do you want me to say? Like, okay.
Well, you didn't want to hear
All
prior
right.
to 6 months ago about 1980. I know that
Well,
you didn't run from it. You didn't run from it. I'm not
I
saying
didn't
that.
deny it. I didn't go, well, but we kind of did though, because no, I just said, yeah, we hadn't won a natty since 1980.
But
I didn't try to reinvent the wheel to prove that we did win a national title since 1980.
You did not deny it. But at the same time, if you had, for example, a Miami fan challenging you and going on and on about 1980 and their 5 national championships, you certainly went to the other side of the argument and said, but we've accomplished A, B, C on down the line in the last 5, 10, 15 years, and you guys have done nothing but be irrelevant. You would have changed the conversation points.
Well, it's not. Well, I'm not talking about 5, 10, or 15 years. I'm talking about since 1930. Since the first time Ohio State played an SEC team. Because anybody can cherry pick any random 5 or 10 year period. I'm talking about from the beginning of time until now. Ohio State is 5-12 against the SEC. Mark, have you ever seen a raccoon in the wild?
I believe I have, yes.
They will eat anything. I mean, they will. You can put a padlock on your trash can. They'll get into it. They'll find a way. They have claws. You wouldn't believe the claws on these raccoons.
Yep.
If you've never seen one. You know what a raccoon won't eat?
Probably a skunk.
A buckeye.
Won't eat a buckeye.
buckeye.
They're poisonous. Yes, they are poisonous.
Right. Yes. Yes. Have a great day.
All right. Good stuff from Uncle Lou. And the point I will make here that I didn't get a chance to, but he's certainly right. So what we attempt to do here on a regular basis is take the numbers, the stats, present them, and then say, this is what it is in context. So go back to 1930, 17 games played in almost 100 years. It's not much of a sample size, and I wish it was larger. And I got on here, I forget who else was on here with me, and they were taking exception to it because I was blasting Ohio State for not scheduling more SEC games. That the SEC and Ohio State, let's see, the last time Ohio State played an SEC regular season game, let's see, would be LSU in 1987-88. They have not played regular season games against the SEC since then. I think that's ridiculous. You're looking at the best conference in America for most of that time, and you're looking at Ohio State, and I would argue, well, I don't need to argue, one of the greatest programs in the history of college football. It could be argued the greatest in the history of college football, certainly the best winning percentage, that they should be playing more often. And that's why we need to take the scheduling out of the hands of the schools and force them to play. Hand them their schedule. Have a formula schedule, not have the programs scheduling the non-conference games based on their own agenda. So it's similar to, let's see, Clemson had a 4-0 record against Ohio State up until 2 years ago. Did I think that was valid? Well, I do think that the first 3 games, certainly Clemson won the games. I would question the 4th game to a certain extent, but that's not Clemson's fault. They won the game in the playoff in 2019, but they had 4 wins against Ohio State. Ohio State had none against Clemson. Were those valid games? Was that a record that was legit? Absolutely. But 4 games over the course of 44 years, would there have been all sorts of times within that 44 years that Ohio State would have beaten Clemson? Absolutely. Would they have beaten Clemson most of the time? Absolutely. Can that be proven? No, they didn't play. But anybody that's reasonable that has seen the production of Ohio State football for 40 or 45 years against the performance of Clemson football for 44 or 45 years would see that Ohio State would have won most of those games, but they weren't played. But yes, the record is what the record is, and that's what and how it currently stands. I don't know if that counts the 2011 Sugar Bowl that Ohio State won over Arkansas. I'd have to go back and look. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Believe you me, it counts, Mark Rogers. I watched the game. The 2 teams played
it
on the
counts.
field. They beat Arkansas.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Just because some guys took
I
tattoos for some trinkets, I don't think that discounts a highly competitive game among 2 top 10 teams. Yes.
Right. Yeah. By the way, to the man that gives college football its voice, we give thanks to the great Mark Rogers. I will stipulate a few things to Uncle Lou's point. Number one, just want to point out, it doesn't really much matter, but for the record, we tied LSU in 1987 in Baton Rouge. I watched the game, so I would add that to the record. I would also
5-12 and 1.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I would also stipulate another point. Some of these matchups, and I'm not saying these next 2 points kind of tie together. Some of those Citrus Bowls in the 90s, to me, okay, we lost to Georgia in the 93 Citrus Bowl 21-14. What's gained by that victory? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you won the Citrus Bowl. It's not like anybody was, it was the biggest deal in the history of deals. And, if we'd have beaten Florida in the 2000, actually we shouldn't even been playing in that one game against Florida after the 2011 season. It probably cost Ohio State a national title in 2012 by that bowl ban, having to take the bowl ban the next year in 2012 when they went undefeated and would have been playing Notre Dame that year. But they played Florida in a meaningless bowl game. And it was meaningless. Let's be honest. And some of these matchups have not always been like matchups. I will stipulate that too. Playing Auburn in '89, we were probably the 5th best team in the Big Ten, maybe 4th best team in the Big Ten. And Auburn in '89 might have been the best team in the SEC or one of the 2 best teams in the SEC. So some of these times, these weren't always like matchups. I just want to stipulate that for the record.
Well,
is that a fair statement?
You know who you're talking to, David. So I watched all of those games, every play of them, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
And, even like, I really think, and I just have to make this last point, I think Ohio State's negative reputation against the SEC goes back to the 2 title game losses in 06 and 07. That's the root of all this. I mean, I think that's really where the narrative really started, because nobody was really, because they were losing Citrus Bowls in the 90s, making as big a fuss of it after they got lambasted in 06 and then in 07 against LSU. I think that's really where the narrative started. I would stipulate that. Wouldn't you as well, Mark?
Yeah, but even before that, I was aware of the record. I was aware of what had happened to Ohio State facing the SEC.
Correct. Wouldn't you say that because of the importance of the 06 and 07, title games, so that I think weighed more on the perception of the public than, let's say, losing 20-14 to Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl in '96.
Sure. Well, for a few different reasons. Of course, the magnitude of the game, but also the disparity of the score. That Tennessee game went down to the wire. If Ohio State wouldn't have fumbled the ball, if they wouldn't have fumbled against Georgia and they fumbled against Tennessee, but they were close games. They had a fumble inside the
Right.
red zone against Georgia in the final 3 or 4 minutes. And they fumbled. There was I forget who the wideout was that fumbled against Tennessee inside the 25 on their last drive as well. But so I'm going to try to slice this fair. I'm going to try to be neutral and be fair about this. So Ohio State's not performed well against the SEC.
No. I just would say this, Mark. I don't think the narrative would be as bad. Let me just make this point and see if you agree with me.
Okay.
Bottom line, I don't think the narrative would be as ugly if Ohio State would have split one of those national title games against, let's say, LSU and Florida in 06-07.
Yeah, but they didn't.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. That goes back to my original point. What was my original point? It says I think it was more the emphasis that the outcry against Ohio State's negative record against the SEC was really rooted in those two games more than it was rooted in the Citrus Bowl losses in the 90s. That's where I was going with my statement.
Sure. Yeah, well, there's no question that if you look at Ohio State's overall record and its performance in postseason games and non-conference games against the other conferences and top teams from the other conferences, and then by extension, look to see how those teams played the SEC, that you would see easily that Ohio State's better than that. But the fact is that they're 5-12 against the SEC, and we could go game by game by game by game. And I would give you my opinion on whether Ohio State was simply just outplayed, outclassed, not good enough. And that was certainly the case many of those times. I would tell you, to your point, that there were times that they lined up in a game that they probably shouldn't have been in because, for example, the one that you brought up, the Hall of Fame Bowl against Auburn, that Auburn team finished 5th or 6th in the country, and Ohio State barely finished ranked, like 24th in the country. And Ohio State got thrown into that game because they're Ohio State. They shouldn't have been in that game, but it's an attractive matchup. Alabama came within 1 point of playing in the BCS championship game, or not a BCS championship game at the time. They would have been playing in the national championship game of sorts in the Sugar Bowl in 1994. They came within 1 point.
Right.
I was at the SEC championship game covering Alabama that year. They lost to Florida by 1 point, or they would have been playing at 13-0 in the national championship game, except they were playing a team at Ohio State that went 9-4 that lost to Penn State by 55 points. So
with the Ohio State lost 3 games that year. And if they'd have covered Sherman Williams on a screen pass, they could have beaten a legitimate top 3 team when Ohio State was only a top 20 team. So that wasn't necessarily a like matchup either. I mean,
sure.
I get your point.
Yeah. So there are a lot of those.
I did want to get to, because I didn't get to the Fisher-Saban situation. I didn't get a chance to call you last week on that. I wanted to get to that if I can here, Mark. I found it to be an interesting kind of war of words between the two. I did want to make the point, I find it interesting. I mean, Nick Saban had the number 1 recruiting class, I think according to 24/7, was it 7 years in a row, maybe 8 years in a row?
Yeah, something like that. I thought it was 6, but whatever the number is.
Okay. And I would like to say that he had the number 1 recruiting class 6 years in a row based on his great ability as a coach and the success of his program, and he did everything above board, and all those recruits were above board, and everything was good. Now, we can all believe that, and we can all believe that to be true, and maybe that was just it. Maybe he got the number 1 recruiting class 6 years in a row because he was Nick Saban. Now, mind you, he didn't do that at LSU. Mind you, he didn't do that wherever he was at before that, but he was able to do that at Alabama. So, okay, maybe it was all above board. And Texas A&M, who never had that type of recruiting class in the history of their program, and I stipulate Jimbo Fisher was a really good recruiter at Florida State, and I understand the recruiting base at Texas A&M, But I believe that's the first time, I don't know how many times, a program's had 7 5-star recruits in one recruiting class, but I don't think that happens too often, does it, Mark?
No.
So, and I believe according to numbers, it was the highest rated class in the history of the 24/7 composite, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So maybe all of those things happened above board, and we just should believe that to be gospel. But when unprecedented things happen like that, it does make you scratch your head and wonder. That's all I'm going to say. Your thought?
Well, here's the thing. If this happened pre-NIL, just like the Ole Miss recruiting class with Laramie Tunsil and Robert Kimdichie and who was the wide receiver that played for the Colts? Anyway.
Oh, Treadwell.
Yeah.
It wasn't a Treadwell?
Laquan Treadwell. Yep.
Yeah.
That raised eyebrows, and then look what happened. We found out what happened. The only difference here, though, is that forming a collective and the school doing the accounting and all of that, it's legal. So what Saban is accusing Jimbo of, since he wasn't real clear about it, we don't know if it was cheating or him just stating they've got more money than anybody else. Therefore, this NIL situation is going to get out of hand, because he's just using them as an example of the programs with the most money are going to buy the most players, and that's where we're headed, and that's where we are. Or was he saying they cheated to, so there's a legal, lawful, according to the guidelines, way to pay the players through NIL, and then there are still ways to cheat. So that's what we don't know for sure. We know that Texas A&M is, we know that, let me phrase it correctly, we know that players on the Texas A&M roster are making NIL money. That's what Jimbo Fisher needs to be clear about, and he would gain more respect from people if he just flat out stated, yes, just like Nick Saban said, we got at least 25 players that get NIL money, and it's roughly $2 to $3 million. And that's what Nick Saban said about it. If Jimbo Fisher would just be upfront and say, yes, we use NIL, it's available to us and everyone else, and it's part of the process, and we have players on our roster that benefit from that. Now, if they're using that as a recruiting tool, that's illegal, and that may well be happening.
Right. Well, I just wanted to say, first of all, I thought Saban's first statement was pretty overt. I mean, he just came out and said it.
Oh, sure.
You know, yeah, I mean, so he didn't mince words, Mark. I mean, at least as far as his original statement, you know, he just came out and said it. I will say that Saban also made the point on NIL. What was the dollar figure he put out there that Bryce Young was going to make through his NIL deal?
I thought it was $1 million. I heard 800,000 the other day.
Okay. Because the other thing that I would say here, and Saban got to the point, I mean, when he cleaned up his statement, I think when he went on Sirius XM and tried to say that, listen, you know, my overarching we just have a bad deal with this whole NIL situation. And that's the road I was going to go down here, Mark, just kind of as my final point on this, is that when you look at this whole NIL situation, and we talked about it before, you know, that this is an opening of Pandora's box. And I had said that basically the long and short of it is this is just leading to the quiet part out loud being done, which is bottom line, let's just go ahead and pay the players. And I think that the people that just want that to happen, and I think a lot of the people that wanted NIL to happen just want that to happen. Now, mind you, if you ask those people, well, show me a detailed plan of how the players should be played, how much they should get, who gets what, and then what happens when all the other major sports come looking for their money? How do you want to dole out the money to basketball or any of the other sports? Or should they get cash too? Because they may come knocking on the door for their cash down the road. And again, I think there's a lot of things in this world that sound good in theory, but once you have to give out a detailed plan to that and say, okay, here's how it's going to get done, back to the devil being in the details, I think some of those people don't always have that thing to put together, but they just think it sounds good in theory, so let's just put it out there. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, ever since this Jimbo Saban back and forth, we probably went on for 3.5 hours after that, and it produced a number of videos. And I will state the same things over and over and over. One being that Nick Saban made those comments. I took it as Nick Saban saying Jimbo and Texas A&M are cheating. However, it was such a vague statement. He was able to walk it back and do it. I don't know whether it was legitimately, but somewhat effectively, because after I read the statement, after the retraction, I thought, yeah, that could be taken as just saying Texas A&M's able to pay their players through NIL. So Saban made a mess of the entire situation because he was vague and accusatory, but he walked it back. And I've never heard him walk anything back. I might be wrong about that, but I can't think of anything that he's ever backpedaled on. So I just think that he went to a place that he regretted, and either he legitimately did not want to accuse them of cheating, or he thought better of it. And that's more likely the situation. And
well, I just want to say, Mark, I thought on the initial statement, I don't think he minced words. I thought he was clear, crystal clear.
Yeah, but if you read it, if you read it and also watch the video of it and read it as well, the quotes, I can see how that doesn't necessarily connotate cheating or accuse Jimbo of cheating. It can be read like that as well.
I still think the larger point he tried to make on this Sirius XM about where we're going with NIL, I think was obviously the more PC statement, but I think it was a worthy statement because number one, I do think the broader point of talking about the NIL is obviously what we're all getting towards here, kind of the larger issue, because we don't have governing bodies, we don't have an NCAA that's worth anything to govern this whole situation. So they're letting the inmates run the asylum here. And, I think this thing is going to eventually lead to a free-for-all. I think down the road, I think you're going to have teams basically doing, could you see programs basically doing what SMU was doing in the 80s? The best team money could buy?
Again, it all depends on how it's done. Are we talking about doing it within the guidelines? Then if there are NILs out there that are willing to, meaning businesses, business people, willing to exchange money for NIL, then it's completely legal. Just like I can earn money from NIL. You can earn money from NIL. The 14-year-old who does stupid dance routines on TikTok can earn money from NIL. It's open to every American. So as long as it's done legally and the school's not tampering and arranging that, they're doing the bookkeeping and they're aware of it, it's on record, that's their role, and they're not arranging it, and they're not also adding to it. That was something that I stated within the first 3 days of NIL coming out last summer was, okay, if the schools are cheating right now, whatever, 5 of them, 10 of them, 150 of them, whatever the number, if they're cheating right now and able to get away with it most of the time, then this is going to make it even more difficult because they're going to be able to, let's say, if the school wants to pump $3 million into its roster and they're able to get NIL deals at $1 million, then they're able to probably more effectively and undercover be able to add their money to the NIL, circumvent the system, and pay the players and just kind of wash their hands of it. So it's I can see where it would make cheating easier now than it was before.
All right. Last thing, bottom line. Does this thing get worse before it gets better?
Oh, it gets worse before it gets better because it takes a long time to fix anything. And especially if they get the government involved, it takes a long, long time to get anything fixed if it gets fixed. So sure, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Okay. Well, as always, I'll be tuning into Mark Rogers to follow it. You have yourself a good evening.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. And I have to apologize at times, especially with this NIL. I've gone through this so many times, and it's really just not a topic that I love talking about, but we have to talk about it. And I've devoted so much time to it in recent weeks, and especially since this feud between Jimbo and Saban and all these videos we've done on it. And I've pretty much stated what I think is wrong about it and how I would correct it. And I'm not thinking that my corrections are picture perfect in any such way, but they are suggestions. And then also for a lot of this, I think if we're going to be real, if we're going to be truthful about it, we're going to throw up our hands and say, we don't know. I don't know if Nick Saban, if you believe Nick Saban, if you believe in his character and integrity, then you believe what he said, that at Alabama, they're doing things right. And it's strategically effective for him to actually admit players are being paid at Alabama through NIL. It's all legal. It's all above board. This many players, this much money. That's where he's being effective. And Jimbo looks like a fool throwing up his hands going, that has nothing to do with it. We don't do that. We don't. Well, yes, you do. You can state it and state it. We're following the guidelines, which I know that he's said. He's thrown out the guidelines comment from time to time. But when it comes to NIL, he just kind of runs away from it. He needs to address it directly and say, yes, we have a collective, just like practically every other school in America. We use it effectively, and we go through the legal system, the attorneys. We have all of that lined up with the collective, with the NIL laws of the state, and we do it the right way. Not just kind of throw up your hands like we don't do that. So with all these calls lined up, I'm not going to go into what I was going to explain because I have a number of times. We want to hear from the callers tonight. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's Exploring with Ben and Sam.
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm good.
I don't have a lot to add to this conversation. I'm just listening to the information that's coming in. It's a lot to take in, obviously, especially with NIL stuff. So I just want to try to rile up the chat for you. The Ducks are going to down that poor dog Uga, and Gators are going to feel the pain of what it is to lose to a Ute.
Well,
that's pretty much it, Mark.
Okay. Should I just leave it at that and let you just feel
we'll leave it
good about that, or should I challenge that, or should I just not mess with that and just have you have your moment and just boom, mic drop? And I already blew it right now. I should have just let you mic drop it and get off the phone or whatever you're going to do after that. Certainly welcome to stay and have a conversation, but it sounded like you were wanting some response or feedback to that.
No, that's it. It's a mic drop. But I did just use your Amazon link earlier, so I hope everyone will also follow suit.
Love that.
So
did everybody catch that?
Mark?
Thank you for the call.
I hope so. Hey.
That was Exploring with Ben. He used the Amazon link tonight. He also had a mic drop to say, The Ducks are downing Georgia, and the Utes are taking out Florida. I'm not going to stand by those predictions. That's for sure, especially the first one. But Exploring with Ben's a great guy, and you got to check out his channel, Exploring with Ben and Sam. And they do some crazy stuff. They're out there exploring. That's a tease. So check out the channel. And yes, Exploring with Ben let us know that he used the Amazon link tonight. Love that. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, good evening, Mark. It's J-Dub calling from Des Moines.
Hey, J-Dub. How are you?
Hey, it's been, I was going to talk about NIL, but you know what? It's just getting to kind of driven into the ground. So I might just follow up on what Ben was saying and try to stir the chat up a little bit. Anyway, before I get there, you know how you're driving out in the countryside and it's the 4th of July and you see like a fireworks display starting and it's just off the horizon. I mean, it's just kind of like, oh. You see it out the corner of the windshield of the car. It's just, and you go, hey, look, they're shooting off fireworks over there. See, that's what happens when you hit the like button, folks. So you hit that thumbs up button and you share. And then people who are out driving around looking for videos, all of a sudden, this starts popping up in their algorithm. And it doesn't cost you anything. It's like the little flag you see way over the top of the hill. But hey, there must be a party going on over there. So you go over the hill to find out what's going on. Mash that thumbs up button. It's the sound of cannon fire in the distance. It draws people in. It increases the reach of the program. So don't forget to mash that thumbs up button.
That was a masterful analogy, J-Dub. I would have never been able to come up with that. But that painted a picture for everyone to let them know that if they take that half second to hit the like button, doesn't cost anything, but it tells YouTube people actually like this live stream, believe it or not. And maybe we should send it out to more people.
Yeah, the more the merrier. And people enjoy interacting with the callers. They enjoy interacting with you. They enjoy interacting with each other in the chat. So why not have more? Well, one of the ways of getting more is taking the 3 seconds it takes to hit that thumbs up. So do it, folks. And whatever you do, get yourself onto the Mark Rogers channel and check out the Alabama or those legit natties that he posted earlier this afternoon, which I thoroughly enjoyed. We need to get that up into the thousands of likes. I can't believe all the Bama haters out there haven't flooded to the Mark Rogers video. Are Alabama's national championships legit? It was a great effort on your part, Mark. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. J-Dub, be honest. Did you like me about 75% into that video?
I was liking you up until about 1978 because I still question your decision on 78.
Okay.
I liked your. I don't want to spoil it. I'm not going to say where it ended up. People need to go and watch the video for themselves. The only year that I disagreed with you on was 78.
Okay.
I could see your argument for some of them that they don't claim, and I could see your argument for some questionables that they did claim. So I'm with you all the way. I just disagree with you on 78.
I'll accept that.
But folks need to go and look that up. Folks need to go and look what Mark did. It's real easy to point to some of these Bama natties and say, "Oh, they're all fake." That's the first thing the haters do is they just don't want to accept the fact that these national championships are the real deal. They don't like it, and so they don't want to live with it. They don't want to hear about it. And then you show them to them and you explain to them why. Well, yeah, they really are the champions that year, and yeah, they really are the champions that year, and maybe one year they shouldn't have been, but there was another year they should have been that they weren't. So then you start, as you did, you break it all down and you get to a certain number, and folks need to go and see what that number is. I'm not going to spoil it.
Thank you, J-Dub. That's good
I just
stuff.
thought it was, I just thought it was very well done. And as a Bama fan who just gets so damn tired of having to fight the fake natty argument, like, God, here's a video I can share with people and say, look, here's a guy who broke it all down. Now you tell me whether you agree with him or not. You did my argument for me, and so thank you.
Well, I had some requests for some other ones, so maybe we'll take on another few teams. I enjoy doing those kind of videos and analysis. I like it, and if people will watch it, I'll do more. But I can't do it if people don't watch them because it just takes up too much time.
Right, and then obviously you're not going to do Georgia Tech or BYU. I mean, it's obviously going to be the name programs that you do. There's been a couple people in the chat. I wanted to run this by you real quick, just kind of take us maybe a little bit of a different angle. First of all, please, God, I hope it's just, and I think it is just a trial balloon Sankey's floating out there about having the SEC only playoff. That would be disastrous. But there's been a couple comments a while ago in the chat, and I can't remember. I'm sorry to the commenter who was making them because I'd like to bring your name into it. But they're saying, how come none of these SEC schools play outside of the SEC? They don't come up north. I hear this all the time. If somebody lives in the Midwest, how come SEC schools don't come up here in November? Well, how come you don't go down there in September? I've always argued that it is easier for a player, for an athlete, to play in a cold environment like you had the snow game up in Michigan this year. I contend that it would be easier for Alabama or LSU or Florida or somebody like that to go up there and adapt to the cold than it would be for that team to come down in week 1 or week 2 and it's 105 degrees on the field. Because once you're hot and your fluids are blown, you are shot. You can always get warm. You can always stand by a fan. You can put a coat on. You can wear long johns underneath your uniform. You can do things to keep yourself warm in a cold environment. But if you get blown out, if you get blown by the heat, you're done. I just think the heat is far more detrimental on an athlete than the cold is. And I wonder what your take on that would be. And I will step out of the way. And don't forget, folks, launch those fireworks. Hit the thumbs up button. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, J-Dub. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the call and for encouraging everyone to hit the like button, use the Amazon link, and watch the video that we presented on Alabama's 18 claimed at national championships. How many will they have when we get through with them? Okay, my thoughts about the weather would be, okay, I understand both sides. And I'm a guy that grew up in Ohio, so I grew up, obviously, everybody grows up in some level of heat during the summer. Yeah, it got to 95 degrees in Ohio during the summer, but obviously more so Ohio and the North known for it being cold, while it's very nice in the South for the most part in the winter. So I would say a number of things here. So I lived in Mississippi for 7 years in my 20s and early 30s. And there was one particular summer in Mississippi when it went over 90 degrees. I looked this up after the fact. I found this ridiculously intricate weather website that you could look up any temperature, any day in history, in any location. And it showed me what I thought was the truth. And that's that in Mississippi in this given year, it was like 1999, it surpassed 90 degrees in May, and it never fell below 90 until October. From May to October, for a day's high, it never went below 90 degrees, and it was brutal. And this was at a point in my life that the heat didn't bother me. It bothers me now. I will get a headache if I'm out in the sun and it's really hot, I'll get a headache if I'm in this direct sunlight for way too long. Yes, I was in Mississippi, Ferris, for 7 years. Yes, I went by choice to work as a sports director at WCBI in Mississippi at a CBS station. And it was, for many accounts, the best job I ever had. Not necessarily the best. Well, there were certain things about it that I didn't like, but the job itself was exceptional because I got to cover the SEC and got paid for it. So anyway, so I agree with J-Dub when it comes to the heat being just sapping your energy and beating you down versus being cold. But it depends on what. See, there's a general area that we all take ourselves to when we think heat. Generally, we're all thinking 90, 95, 100, in that range. But when we talk about cold, if you're talking to a Southerner and you talk about cold, they might be thinking, yeah, when it gets down to 45, it's cold. No, there's a wider range of depth of cold. I remember one winter in Ohio, it getting down to 25 below zero every day for about 8 or 9 consecutive days, and going to work in that, cleaning off my car, going to work, having to leave the building at work just day after day after day after day in that kind of wet, like it was bone chilling cold, ridiculously cold, cutting through your body cold. So there's a huge gap between thinking 40 degrees is cold and then thinking about 20 below. That's a 60-degree difference. That's like the difference between it being 40 and thinking about that being warm and it being 100. So there's a huge difference there. But I do agree with J-Dub in terms of it sapping your energy, because if anything, if you're participating in the game and it's cold out, my experience, having played in the cold, various sports, depending on the sport, when you sit on a bench in baseball and just have the mindset that it should be nice out, we're playing baseball, it's tough to get warm playing baseball versus just a different adrenaline playing football. And if it's 20 degrees out, even at my age, if you sent me out right now and it's 20 degrees outside and I was dressed properly, I would have enough adrenaline flowing that I would not be bothered by 20-degree weather playing football. I would just standing outside. But if I was playing football at my age, even take me back to 20 years old, 20 degrees never bothered me. I was not bothered in any such way about 20-degree weather when I was 20 years old. But I grew up and I was used to it. So I'm going to give you the heat versus the cold argument, J-Dub, in that regard. I think it does sap more energy out of you. The heat, the humidity, it just beats you down versus just being cold and miserable. But, and let's also understand that the cold in the north during a college football season gets way oversold. It truly gets cold in the north right around Christmas time into January and February. That's when it gets brutally cold. It's typically not brutally cold in November. Take the temperature in Columbus, Ohio during every college football Saturday this year. For the first couple weeks, it's almost going to seem like, for the most part, we don't know. This could be a cool year and it could only be 75 the first Saturday against Notre Dame. But if it's typical, could be 83, could be 88, could be 94. It could be similar to what it is in the SEC for the first week, 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks in September. Similar, not to that extent, similar. And then it's rather comfortable throughout the rest of September, October, typically even into November. Shoot, there have been Ohio State, Michigan games when it was 60 degrees outside. Somebody challenged when Kevin Warren wanted Ohio State and the Big Ten to be playing Big Ten, or no, he made this statement a few months ago that if Ohio State had to play home playoff games in December that he would rather play in Indianapolis under a dome. Gene Smith, the athletic director for Ohio State. If I said Kevin Warren, I was mistaken. That just shot out of my mouth because I was criticizing somebody in the Big Ten, so it automatically went to Kevin Warren. Gene Smith, the Ohio State athletic director, stated a few months ago that he would want Ohio State to play home playoff games in Indianapolis in a dome. Well, I'm not going to go into how stupid that is from coming from a very smart guy who's made now two stupid statements, one being that he had Ohio State give up its bowl eligibility in 2012 in favor of 2011, and we know how that turned out. It may have cost Ohio State a national championship, and then now wanting to play a home playoff game in Indianapolis and miss home field advantage. Do you know what the temperature was the Saturday of the Big Ten championship game in December in Columbus? It's like 58 degrees. So it doesn't get that cold in Big Ten country. Now, Big Ten country encompasses a lot of ground. So Columbus is one of the warmer spots in the Big Ten versus what's going on in Minneapolis or Madison, Wisconsin. So there could be a 25-degree temperature change between those two locations. But by and large, it doesn't get that cold in the Big Ten until the final couple weeks of the season. So the cold in the Big Ten is overblown, over-discussed. It's not the NFL. We see the NFL playing frigid games in December and especially in the playoffs in January in Green Bay, New England, Buffalo. But those games are in January, completely different weather pattern at that point. Not that on occasion it doesn't get brutally cold in November. My son actually played the coldest game in the history of Connecticut high school football about 6 years ago. And I was there and I had a video camera and it just froze up. It just stopped working. I didn't have a video camera. That wasn't that long ago. I must have had my phone. Anyway, my phone wouldn't take video. But he played in some game, it was like 8 below or something like that. So anyway, so my point in all that is that that's the argument on J-Dub's side. And I get it. And I think it is more taxing on an athlete to play in the heat than in the cold. But there is a wider range of cold when you're talking, if you're talking Ice Bowl, Packers, Cowboys, 1967, then you're talking 15 below. You're not talking 35. That's a 50-degree temperature difference. But, J-Dub, I will say this. On the Big Ten side of this, on the Big Ten argument side, those games played by the SEC in cold weather, they don't happen. So that's all theory. We're all talking about theory. When is an SEC team played in a cold weather situation? It doesn't happen. I can only think of a couple times when an SEC team went north, and that was always in September. Alabama played in Happy Valley about 10 years ago. Auburn played in Happy Valley. Well, they played in September. It's probably 72 degrees out. LSU went to play at Lambeau Field against Wisconsin, but that was the first or second week of the season. It was 65 degrees out. So the SEC, we don't have examples of the SEC playing meaningful games against northern teams, we'll say the Big Ten, in the cold. We don't have evidence of it. So we've got nothing to go by. But we do have a ton of evidence of Big Ten teams playing in the South in heat. You know, usually in Orlando and Tampa and those locations of the Citrus Bowl and the Outback Bowl and where the SEC and the Big Ten typically meet, the Orange Bowl, Michigan, Georgia last year, typically it's comfortable at that time of year. It's comfortable. So it's actually a good thing. The Big Ten teams leaving 25 degrees to go play in 75-degree weather in Florida. And sometimes it's actually even cool. But there are occasions when, for some reason, in January, it is still blazing hot somewhere in Florida. So we know that Big Ten teams have had to experience that, and they do play at a large disadvantage because they are playing all their games on the road in bowl games. I mean, way away from home. They're playing the likes of USC and UCLA in the Rose Bowl throughout history. We know UCLA has not been in a Rose Bowl in 25 years, but throughout history, they've played USC and UCLA in bowl games in their own home stadium or just across town for USC. They've played the likes of Florida and Auburn and Georgia in Gainesville and Orlando and Jacksonville at the Gator Bowl. And so where I think J-Dub, it hits Big Ten fans is that they just overwhelmingly always have to play on the road or have to play in sites that are lean heavily SEC when it comes to weather and location. So it just gets to be kind of a drag that's always the balance of power from a weather standpoint, climate, location. Uncle Rico, I will honor your super chat. It's been on the screen for like 45 minutes. So I know you made a comment before that I was not honoring your super chat. Of course I do. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for that. Uncle Rico says, now is the time to get Zach Smith on the show. He'll tell you all about the well-oiled SEC cheating machine he's recruited for and against them. That is true. And we've had Zach on a number of times, and we've had some really good conversations with Zach Smith. To tell you the truth, it just has not crossed my mind the past few weeks to contact him, nor have I had a subject that has hit me that I thought, okay, I'm going to call Zach Smith. We were getting together every Friday for quite a few weeks, but just did not cross my mind recently. Tim is saying Ohio State played USC in 2018 in the Coliseum. No, they played there in 1989, and they played there in 2008. No, they played USC in the Rose Bowl. That's what I said. I said in the Rose Bowl, UCLA's home field, or just cross town for USC. That was my direct quote. I know where the teams play. I don't think you guys would be watching me now if I didn't understand where the teams play. I know where everybody plays. All right. And I'm going to apologize for something before I take the next call, and I apologize to the next caller. Yes, Tim, 2008. I said 2008. Because there were a few subjects brought up specifically to NIL, and I have to admit, I just bailed on them. I did not live up to the expectation of what I'm supposed to be doing here, and that's providing my opinion to my very best ability to explain. And I just kind of was like, NIL, I'm sick of talking about it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. So I probably did for about 20 minutes there. I did my very worst job of hosting that I've ever done here in 10 years plus for about 20 minutes, because I was just in this mindset of NIL, sick of talking about it. I started to explain a few things and then I bailed. That probably made absolutely no sense to anyone listening, because I've got to admit, I just bailed on the conversation a number of times. So I apologize to Real MVP letting me know I've missed some super chats. I don't know how. I've been watching this whole thing the whole time. So I will get back and try to find those. But I apologize. I will do my best that even if I'm a bit weary on a topic, that I will trudge through and explain myself, because especially if I've got new viewers here, they need to find that I actually kind of know what I'm talking about sometimes. YNP 1978. I am starting to dig your channel. You do a fine job. Just subscribed. Well, we appreciate that. I am going to add in this because you probably don't know this. So YNPL 1978, what you're in store for here, because you are new to the channel, you get one of these. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Would love to know who you root for and how long you've been watching. Sports Chat 503, one of the best guys in the business, has shown up here. Ryan, appreciate you, man. Thanks for being here. Thanks for saying hi. And you do a great job, of course, as well. I was just admitting to everyone that for about a 20-minute frame there, about 45 minutes ago, I was not doing a good job. I was sick of talking about NIL, and I just blabbered and just refused to talk about it, and that was not good of me. All right, let's get to our next call. I'm sorry, I've left somebody on the line here. Here we go. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Man, we good friends. You can leave me on the line all day.
DeAndre, I tried to.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Good. Hey, man, you know I love the Alabama thing. We brought out some good points. I still think 1978, 77, which one it was, Clemson should go back and claim it. I don't know why they don't do it, but they should.
Sure.
But the one I found interesting in, I think you said it was 9-2 one year and won a national championship over somebody who was 11-0.
Yep.
Did I hear that right, or I
You
misheard it?
sure did.
You gotta go look at that then.
They got shut out
That was
twice.
1945, though, right?
I believe it was
Yeah,
45.
by Georgia.
I think it was Mississippi State
really
and
don't
Vandy.
count. Right. And that was amazing.
It might have been
I love it. I hope
61.
everybody go check that one out. 61?
I think it was 61.
Oh, okay. And I didn't know that about the Michigan State, Notre Dame, that Alabama actually finished undefeated while they finished tied. I thought that was interesting too.
Yes.
So, but I saw you and Cam talking, and you asked Cam, I think, when does Miami have a legitimate chance to win the national championship or make the playoffs, I should say.
Yeah.
So I think he said, I know they got Texas A&M, but possibly this year. And I think he made a comment about DJ Ugule, and I'm kind of like, he's not the only person on the team. And don't get me wrong, but I just saw Stetson Bennett win a national championship with a very good defense, very great defense. And I don't know if people really follow Clemson, but that defense is going to be probably on the same level as what that Alabama defense, that Georgia defense was just coming up here. And DJ Ugule is just as talented, or more talented than Stetson Bennett. Now, I'll tell you, Georgia had a better offensive line. I'm not going to say they had better receivers. And I'm going to say the running backs are about equal that you're going to see this year. But who says he can't get hot and all of a sudden change around? I think he heard Ghost. Georgia hit that dude so many times. I think he heard Ghost all year. Because he absolutely got slaughtered. And I know DJ looked bad last year, but he also looked good coming in relief for Trevor Lawrence. He brought Clemson for the biggest comeback in history against Boston College, who has a very good coach. And then he put Notre Dame barely beat him. So I just think people need to see what the dude's going to do for the first 4 games to be telling. That not no disrespect to Georgia Tech, but they're not that good. I think they played 2 easy games. Then they had Wake Forest. and then let's see what he looks like, because sometimes confidence does a lot for you. And I think he lost his confidence outside the fact that he was hurt and his offensive line was terrible and his receivers. I didn't think that it was a good idea to put Justin Ross at the slot, but that's all they had. So I just, and they have some 3 good running backs. So I don't know where people are getting this like they're going to be down next year. And they have an easier schedule this year compared to what they had last year. And it took NC State overtime to beat them, and Justin Ross, playing with a hurt shoulder, missed the catch in the end zone. I would go back to that Pitt game. I think it was 10-0 when Shipley missed that catch. And if it wasn't for a personal foul against one of the defensive linemen for Clemson had got them to go 4 and out, and it was good, and they could have drove down. So I really don't get it, man. I really don't see why people are so down after a 10-3 season on what Clemson did. I mean, Georgia was the best team in the country last year, you know. And I know Alabama could say, well, our 2 best receivers were hurt. Clemson played that team to a 10-3 game. And I'm not going to sit up here and say Daniels was that bad of a quarterback. Maybe Clemson defense was just that good. They played them to a 10-3 game and turned around on the INT that he threw. That Justin Ross said that Coach Sweeney said Justin Ross is the reason why he threw the INT, because he ran the wrong route. So I don't know. I just think people writing an obituary on Clemson too fast. And then also my question for Miami, their biggest weakness was their offensive line. And that's because the best strength is Clemson's defensive line. So when they play in a couple of weeks, I know Clemson got Notre Dame before that, I don't like their chances in their offensive line. And if Van Dyke is all that, why did he start? Why was he like 3rd or 4th string? I mean, if he's all that, why was he 3rd or 4th string? I mean, he just all of a sudden turned around.
Well, DeAndre,
What?
are you ready for me to respond? What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that it's human nature for most fans to try to find a way to bring down whomever is dominated. So everybody's always going to be looking for whatever team can bring that team down. And they're always going to be trying to figure out reasons why that dominance is done for that particular team. So that's first and foremost. Okay, let's put that aside. That's just perception. Then let's get to the nuts and bolts of it. I don't know how many times I watched Clemson play last year, but it was quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Probably saw him play 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that their defense was ravaged at some point with injury, but I expect that their defense is going to be maybe the best in the country, and certainly one of the 3 or 4 best in the country. And I have little doubt about that. What I want to see is an offensive line that's my biggest question, is the offensive line. And DJ played so well against Notre Dame and Boston College the year before that it's hard for me to process that he was as bad as he was last year. And I do think that it was the offensive line. I think it was the receivers, and I think it was him. It was some level of combination. You could go through every game, and I saw the Boston College game. I saw the Georgia game, the NC State game, the Wake game, the bowl game, et cetera, and it seemed like on one play it would be the offensive line. He wouldn't have enough protection. On the next play, he would just misfire by 5 yards. On the third play, the wide receiver would drop a catchable ball. It just seemed to be between those 3 units on the team, on the offense, the only dependable unit on the offense where the running backs played well, had a good season. The other three were far below Clemson standards. So I have some level of confidence that most of that's going to get fixed this year, but for them to go from being mediocre at quarterback, wide receiver, and offensive line to being elite is a lot to ask as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I would say this about the receivers. And I think I'll go back to the LSU game. Plus, they had too many receivers that were built in the same style.
Yeah.
They were tall, lanky guys. This year, they're going to come in. Spector is more of a quick person like Tyler Renfro. And so is the guy that was an '01 slot receiver that came out of Florida State. He didn't play last year. So I think the receivers are going to be better because they got more diversity. Because all these guys are highly recruited. If people forget, E.J. Williams played with a broken bone in his hand last year. He missed a lot of games. And that's somebody that we don't talk about. The guy, hopefully, he's finally healthy. We got rid of Frank Latson. The Collins brothers, they look good. And again, we had all these problems. And take away the pick game, which I still said we should have won. It simply makes the catch. I mean, who blew them out? Iowa State had one of the best defenses. I know Mario Goodrich made the INT, but we beat them 20-13. I think Iowa State beat Oklahoma last year. I mean, they weren't a bad team. I think they had 9-win season, correct?
I don't think they beat Oklahoma.
Really sure.
They went 7-6. So here's my issue, though.
Okay.
As far as you bringing up Clemson not getting blown out, yeah, they lost. They lost to the best team in the country, the national champion, on a pick six. Otherwise, it's a 3-3 game.
Mm-hmm.
They lost to Pitt. You mentioned the play that could have been made. I watched that game. I don't remember that particular play, but I watched them play Pitt. They played them on the road. You know, they lost a fairly close game that turned out to be a 10-point game, and then they lost to NC State in overtime on the road. Okay, but they also barely held off Georgia Tech, 14-8.
Yep,
Needed a goal line
14-8.
stand. They barely beat Boston College. They needed a red zone stop at the end of the game to hold them off. Whatever the final was there, 20-17 or whatever it was. The Florida State game. Yeah, when they had a scoop and score, Florida State, they had a strip sack. Jermaine Johnson, that gave them the lead. It looked like Clemson might be done, but they did put together a drive to win the game. Won by 4 points. I'm sure the Syracuse game was close. They only beat Syracuse by a field goal. So,
Right. But that's what I'm saying. The defense that we have coming back is that good. The offense is the problem. I mean, even with Brent Venables gone, the defense is going to be phenomenal because all those guys return. And you get better linebackers. And now, don't get me wrong, Booth is not coming back. But Booth played hurt a lot last year. He didn't play that much. That's why his stock dropped in the NFL draft. But the one team that we did blow out, for whatever reason, we murdered Wake Forest. I don't know how. It's like, you know, and I understand that the style, Jason brought this up last time we talked, the style that Wake Forest plays doesn't work very good against Clemson. And, you know, the Florida State game, yeah, I know it was like that pass is Brett Carter, but there was also that crazy run that running back had. How often does that happen? Where the guy stood up on the defender and took off like the Fiesta Bowl with Oregon and
Auburn
that one year. Yeah. So a lot of fluky things happen. And everybody says, well, we pretty much shut down Georgia Tech. I mean, and it wasn't hard to do, but I mean, they only scored 8 points. I mean, I just think that there's a lot of stuff that needs to get fixed. And sometimes new creativity, new ideas need to come in. And maybe, I don't know, I'm not big on bringing the Spreeder like everybody is, but they said the guy that worked with him at Richmond was pretty good. This guy was not the number one quarterback in the country for no reason. I know Tate Martell and other players have been bust too, but we've seen this guy put it together a couple of times. I just think that offensive line has to improve, and I don't know what's going on with Christian Lay. Now, why they're not talking about him playing? But I just don't understand why offensive line play is so terrible. And because I think I said this last year, I'm gonna let you go. I thought if you gonna be that bad on offensive line, kick McFadden in that guard, because that's where he gonna play as pro, and put Christian Lay out there. You remember when Florida did that with Nixon and one of the Pouncey brothers? They put Nixon out there at left tackle and put the other guy and put Pouncey on the inside and say, hey, our left tackle is our weakest spot. And they beat Alabama, and I think they ended up winning the national championship that year. Sometimes you got to let people get tested by fire, and it's going to happen sometimes. So, I mean, like I said, I think Clemson is better than what people think, and I think we're fans, and we think that our team is going to do the best. I remember there was a bunch of times I used to look at Clemson's schedule. Man, we're going to go undefeated. I talk about this is in the 90s. And right when Kit Hatfield and West was taking over, I'm like, they ain't playing nobody. We should kill everybody. They'd be like 7-5. And man, how we 7-5? And we got this guy, that guy, and all these other people. So that kind of hurt me. But I'll let you go, Mark, man. You have a great night.
Thanks, DeAndre. Appreciate the call, man. And then the last thing I will say, see if I can drop this call. My goodness, it took about 4 tries. The last thing I'll say about the whole Clemson won close games, lost close games is that bowl game. I was happy for it because I picked Clemson to cover the spread, but my goodness, those were 2 of the freakiest plays that you will ever see when you talk about the pick 6 that was batted in the air where if I remember it correctly, Brock Purdy threw the ball. It was batted back it was batted up in the air. He went to bat it down and he kind of missed and he batted it right to a defensive back who ran it for a touchdown on a pick 6. Now that is a fluke play. And then the other one was where Clemson's winning by a touchdown. Iowa State's got the ball. They're driving, and Brock Purdy passes the first down marker to get the first down on 4th down. He gets it, but the ball gets knocked out of his hand. Great play by whomever made it. I don't remember. Gets knocked out of his hand, and it goes behind the line to gain. So Clemson recovers, and no, didn't even recover. Iowa State recovered, but they couldn't get the first down. So I've never even seen that ever happen, let alone happen with a game on the line where somebody made the first down, fumbled, the ball went backwards behind the line, recovered, and the team did not get the first down. Crazy. All right. Thank you for calling the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
My name is Sean. How are you?
Hey, Sean. I'm good. What's going on?
How are you doing? Not too much. I just graduated a couple weeks ago, and I'm just kind of chilling until I start my new job.
Yeah, what's on your mind?
Yeah, so I want to talk about how we can potentially improve the regular season and the playoffs.
Okay.
My plan is a little controversial. It's very NFL, where everybody gets to play with everybody. This is assuming that Oklahoma and Texas come over to the SEC. This is kind of after that happens. So every team within the SEC would play 15 games. Every team in the Big Ten would play the amount of games, and so on and so on. And I didn't really factor in the conference that Cincinnati's in, but they do the exact same thing. They would have the 4 best teams within that same conference, right? They face one another, then they move on, and it'd be like a championship game. And then either, if we didn't include the conference in which the American Conference, I believe, which Cincinnati's in, if we didn't include that, we'd have the number 1 conference overall. They'd have a bye, right? So let's say it's the SEC. They would kind of sit out. Then the Big Ten would go against one another. I picked the Big Ten. The Big Ten and the Big 12 they'd go against one another. I picked the Big Ten, and then the Pac-12 and so on and so on, right? And then eventually the winner of those 2 rounds, like, they would face the SEC, and that's how we crown the national title. Everyone gets to play everyone within their conference. It would be incredibly interesting. No one gets to say that if Georgia would have played Ole Miss, it would have been a different story, or if Wisconsin would have played Michigan, it would have been a different story, or whatever, and so on and so on. Everyone would have played each other. There would have been like a little mini playoffs, and the best 2 teams the best 4 teams would go at it. They'd be a conference champion. They'd go, and then it'd just be a great game. What are your thoughts on that format?
Well, I'm trying to process all that. So let's start with the SEC. Everybody plays everyone. So that's a 15-game schedule, a regular season schedule.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's still a conference championship game?
Right. So what would happen is the 4 best teams within the conference. What I had Ole Miss, UGA. This is in no particular order. Ole Miss, UGA, Texas A&M, and Alabama. They'd face one another in like a semi-conference type deal, and then the top 2 would play. So that'd be 17 games in total, in which the SEC would play, and it'd be a very similar format for the rest of the conferences, right?
Okay, and so this is before the playoff, and then so once we determine who the SEC champion is, that team goes into a playoff against the other conference champions.
Yes.
Okay. And so
what would happen is
as long as that SEC champion continues to win and wins a national championship, they would play how many games?
Well, if they were the number 1 seed, which I imagine they'd play 18 games, right? But if they weren't, they'd potentially play 20.
They're only playing 1 more game?
So what would happen is if they were the number 1 seed, they'd have a bye for the 2 other conferences to play. So it would be like the Big 10 versus the Big 12 and the ACC versus the Pac-12, right?
Gotcha.
And then the winner of those 2 semi-conference games or whatever, they'd play each other, and then the winner of that game would then play the SEC champion. So you really want to get the number 1 seed, so you can have 2 games off. But I bet if not, you're just going to add 2 more. You're going to add potentially 3 more games if you make it to the national championship.
So let's say you're the Pac-12. You're the Pac-12 champion, and you don't get this bye. You're not the number 1 seed. You're the number 5 seed. You would play, let's say, the ACC, and let's say the Big 10 and the Big 12 played. You'd have to beat the ACC. Then you'd have to play the winner of the Big 12 and the Big 10, and then you'd have to play the SEC champion. So I see a number of issues with this. One would be who determines. So the number 1 seed gets a double bye, and then the other 4 have to play a little tournament. Who determines who gets the number 1 seed?
The playoff committee. In this scenario, the playoff committee still exists.
Why?
But instead of
Why the
Yeah.
playoff committee?
Well, we kind of have that format now. So instead of just four
Why?
people,
We have a chance to correct all that. Why would we
Okay.
continue to let 13 people? Now you've given them a lot more power. You've given them a power to determine who's the number one seed, and the number one seed gets a double bye, and everybody else has to play 2 games. I'm sorry. That's not workable. It's not fair. It's not a good system in any way. I'm sorry. You don't see the many flaws in that.
So I guess like my next question would be, I didn't think all the way through to the playoff committee who would pick or whatever. It was just like automatic bids to the playoff for the champion for the conference champion, and then I didn't think all the way through to which how you'd pick the seating. What would be a more appropriate way to do that instead of the playoff committee? Because that is so flawed.
To give somebody a double bye, don't ask me, because
Yes.
I'm not in favor of anybody getting one bye, let alone a double bye. That you are elevating that team so far above the other 4, and for no conceivable reason. Like, who would have received this double bye this past season?
It would more likely be Alabama.
So Alabama, what did they do that Michigan didn't do?
They beat the number one team.
Well, why was that other team the number one team?
Because Alabama lost against Texas A&M at their home.
Okay. You can go through every season of the playoff era, and you try to determine who should get the double bye. In 2019, LSU was undefeated, Ohio State was undefeated, Clemson was undefeated. Who gets the double bye? And then what poor teams have to play 2 games against conference championship level teams just to get to play that other team?
I see the flaw. I had a rough idea of how this would work, but I definitely see the flaw, which
well, it's interesting, and I just think it's too many games too, way too many games. These guys are opting out of games right now. We can't have them playing an 18-game season. But I do appreciate the call. I need to get to these other calls, but thank you for that, Sean. You have a great night.
Okay. You as well.
All right. Before we take these calls, and I was going to take one more call, and I guess we're gonna take these 2 calls that are on the line. I've got some super chats to catch up to that you guys alerted me to. I never want to miss a super chat. Tim, thank you so much for that. Thanks for the live show, Mark. USC is a winning record against the SEC, both regular season and bowls. Fight on. I think we would be hard-pressed to find anyone that USC does not have a winning record against all time. And fortunately for them, they fired Clay Helton in time for that not to change. Falcon Rex with a number of super chats for us. We appreciate that, Falcon Rex. TVD is all that. And we have posted all the other super chats, Falcon Rex, so thank you so much for those. All right, now we're up to 3 calls. Okay, we'll take these 3 calls here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, just saw you're talking a little bit about the playoffs and new scheduling formats and a couple other things. My major contention right now, one thing I want to see happen before they do anything tinkering with the playoffs is I don't like this committee at all. I don't like this committee idea in any way. I don't
That's
think
me
there's
applauding.
really enough
Thank you,
transparency.
Sean. Thank you.
Yeah, I really want to see some objective criteria involved in this. I don't necessarily why you have to have people involved with clear affiliations to individual schools and conferences. Like, not to say,
I've been saying
and I'm
this
not
for
going to
years.
accuse anyone of actually being. I'm not going to accuse anyone of actually having bias, but there's a perception of bias that's going to be there no matter what.
Everybody
no matter what
has
they decide,
bias.
no matter how they. Oh, of course, yes. And I mean, I didn't really even mind the old BCS format, how they determined it. The only problem with the BCS is that it only picked 2 teams. That was really the only issue that people kept having.
There's another point I make
with it
constantly. Yes.
And I would absolutely, and I mean, I'd like to see it expand to 8 teams. I think 8 is probably as far as you can go without completely blowing up the postseason we have right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get to 16 and all of a sudden these bowl games mean, I mean, as much as they're diminishing in meaningfulness right now, like, they're going to lose any significance whatsoever. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but if you expand past 8, then you know, the postseason just becomes purely about the playoffs, and the whole system for the, you know, the second tier teams, you know, like the environment for the Purdues and the Kentuckys and Wake Forest in the world. Like, I think they kind of get hurt if you expand the playoffs more, because even if they make the playoffs every once in a while, it's, you know, which they would have a better chance to do. You know, most of the seasons, they're just playing a lot of exhibition games, it would seem like. They don't really have that much to play for. So, I mean, I like the idea of 8. How you would put the 8 teams in is, you know, I would say something like, you know, have an objective sort of poll and RPI sort of formula to determine the, you know, give automatic bids to the 5 power conference championships, and then, you know, the next 3, you know, get drawn in by you know, some objective criteria that doesn't involve a committee. And that would be my ideal situation for the playoff formula right now.
All right. Sounds very similar to what I've served up in a number of live streams and videos for years and 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 years. And the first step in creating a system in which you could have a legitimate playoff, it's an invitational now is what it is. Teams get invited. It's not a playoff. Is that you need to fix the scheduling. So that's my idea, is that you need to fix the scheduling so the scheduling is equitable. Therefore, you can have a system that then fairly evaluates the teams based on their records. And yeah, I would select the 5 conference champions, and then I would go with the 3 wild cards that have the best record, and I would break ties based on head-to-head and a strength of record formula.
So I mean, you would have the record be number 1. So I mean,
I would.
You just say like if you have like an 11-1 Mountain West team who's in contention with
not in the Mountain West,
like a 10-3.
No.
Okay.
All in the Power 5.
I mean, 12. But I mean, like the rest of the conference, the conference are eligible to play in the national in the playoffs,
sure.
Right? We want to make it open to them.
Yeah, I would give them.
I mean, there could be a scenario.
I would give them 1 spot. Well, to back up, I've opened every playoff video I've ever shot with this solution. What do we do with a group of 5? I really don't care, but I think something needs to be done, meaning do not tease them into thinking that they have a legitimate shot of participating all hell had to break loose, and there had to be a perfect scenario for Cincinnati to make it this past year. And I don't expect that to happen for a long, long time again. So basically, one of two decisions needs to be made. Either give them a formal spot, give them an actual spot that's guaranteed, or tell them to go play their own playoff. One of the two. Not have this wishy-washy, they might make it, it depends on our committee. No, either they have a spot or they don't have a spot. That would be the determination I would make.
Oh, I guess I can kind of understand that situation. But it does set sort of a hard limit on what the group of five can actually achieve. And there have been years, I think back to like the Boise States of the late aughts and the early part of the last decade. Like they had teams. They had legitimate top 10 programs, like top 10 teams. They were like I in 2010. I honestly thought they might have had the best team in the country at that point. And I would have loved to see them play Oregon or Auburn. I definitely don't think if you put them on a field, I definitely don't think they'd be massive dogs against them. And I want teams like that to have a shot.
Well, here's the problem, though. Would they have made it to a national championship scenario undefeated had they played a legitimate schedule, a Power 5 schedule?
That's something that's basically impossible to answer. Based on what I saw, based on what I watched, until they tripped up against Nevada, they were beating teams by 40, 50 points every single week. They had a big win over Virginia Tech to start at the beginning of that season. It was essentially a road game. And at least like my eyeball test, which probably doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot. But that team, that was a team I was very interested in seeing how they could perform against the elites in college football. And that kind of bummed that we didn't get to see that.
Well, just for time constraints purposes, if we included some type of what you suggested, an RPI or some type of a factor that would measure, everything that we're used to, strength of record would be my suggestion, because that's a combination of your strength of schedule and your dominance over that schedule, your ability to beat those teams convincingly. But if that was applied, all those teams you're talking about in the group of five, they would be wiped out. Like Cincinnati would not have made the playoffs this year.
Well, they beat the number 5 team in the country, didn't they? This year on the road, they beat the team that finished number 5.
Yeah, they had a one-game season. Absolutely, they looked really good for 1 week, and they went to Notre Dame and won by 2 scores. Absolutely, that's what Cincinnati did. But why are we expecting Ohio State and Michigan and teams in the SEC to beat like 6 teams like that rather than 1? That's why I say either give them 1 spot for their very best team, or tell them go play your own playoff. One or the other. Their records cannot be evaluated against everybody else. You cannot evaluate Houston, who went 12-1 last year, as being like Ohio State. They're just not. They're not even close. We see this repeated over and over and over and over when we see these teams play in postseason games and in regular season. We saw a Cincinnati team that was 10-3 that was one of the 3 or 4 best group of fives, lose to Ohio State by 6 touchdowns a couple of years ago. Just
hello. Yes, I can also fire back by saying, like, the ACC and the Pac-12 and the Big 12 have had years where they're not remarkably better than. They might only have like 2 top 25 teams in the whole league. Like, not every Power 5 schedule is made the same.
Sure.
Yeah. So why is Pitt rewarded last year? Because the ACC was basically just flat garbage. the ACC was not. I mean, the AAC wasn't great last year either. So the ACC was a little bit stronger, but
well,
I
when
mean, they were.
I acknowledge that the
I mean,
ACC
that's
was
the same
garbage
problem with
last year.
Pitt.
I acknowledge that the ACC was garbage last year, but the ACC was garbage compared to the other Power 5 leagues. Don't compare the ACC to the American Conference.
And I mean, we have seen the group of five since they went to that New Year's Six format where the group of five gets the automatic bid. You can say they're a one-game season as well, but they've
played pretty well.
Decent record in those games.
Yeah. The very best of the group of five, whether that was Houston or UCF. Yes, they've beaten Baylor, they've beaten Florida State, they've beaten Auburn. Absolutely. That's the very best group of five team taking on a team that's the 10th best team in the country, something
Top
in that range.
Team. Yeah. 5th to 10th, yeah, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. So I mean, like, I think I definitely think they should be, punished in the system for doing that. But I definitely want to leave an avenue open for them, and that's why I like just the flat 3 wild cards, and have that objective and have these objective criteria. And I think that's about all I really have to say.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Have a wonderful night.
I appreciate the call. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
We are always going to have an issue comparing group of five teams whose schedules aren't anywhere close to a Power 5 schedule, even a Pac-12 Power 5 schedule. Most of the time, the Pac-12 has gotten to a point, though, that comparison can be made to a certain extent. But Cincinnati played like the 90th schedule in the country this past year. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hi, this is Fred in Tulane. I'm a first-time caller.
Going in 3, 2, 1.
No. I'm calling for the chat. The chat has a question.
And the question is?
He said, this is from Shinkopotamus. Ask Mark why the free market can't balance the value in the NIL. And I said, can you rephrase that? And he said, how long will it take for the free NIL to balance out or stabilize the fair market value of players and teams? That's a complicated question.
It sure is. What is fair and what is
You don't
balance?
have to answer right now. You can think about it if you want for a while. How long would it take with a free NIL? With a free NIL, if it was just legal for everybody, how long would it take to stabilize?
Legal. It is legal for everyone.
So how long would it take to stabilize is his question.
What does I don't know. I don't even know what that means. Like, I understand what he's saying, that it's the wild, wild west and we don't have a grasp of what's going on. And it seems like it's all over the place, but I don't even know what stability looks like. Stability means that
I agree. I agree. I think it's too ambiguous.
It means that Ohio State's got a ton of money and Texas A&M has a ton of money. And when I say those schools, I'm not talking about the schools themselves, but their connections to business has so much money that's what it's going to be. And it's going to be the same thing that we're looking at right now, that a few are going to dominate the masses.
All right. I'm going to get to the second question because the third question is just oh my God, this is going to blow your mind. It's from Lemansky. But first, Falconer X, he is concerned that NIL money is going to take away from turf research. He has spent a half an hour tonight explaining us about how many blades of grass per inch and about there is no level playing field. They're all sloped for drainage. So do you think that's going to be a problem? Do you think turf research will suffer due to the NIL?
I think that Falconer X should become the commissioner of turf management because.
Hey, listen, he said it's a science. He said teams get 80 blades of grass per square inch or 100. It's very specific. And I'm just wondering, are you an 80 blade per square inch guy or 100? I'm about a 92 blade per square inch guy myself.
Blades. I like a nice plush condensed grass So I'm more in the 103
100,
range.
100 slows me down. 100 slows me down. It catches in my cleats.
Well, it's
That
gonna,
92 works.
103 is going to slow down those fast SEC teams and give the rest of the teams a
Right.
chance.
Now
George,
listen,
thank you
the
so much.
freaking
I
no,
appreciate it.
the question of the night is from Lemansky. He said we need more women in the chat to balance George's testosterone. And I just had the greatest idea in the history of the world. Start a dating app for only people from your channel. So we know we're not, you can see their personality in the chat. You can hear them on the phone call. And then you can, $10 a month, join Mark Rogers Dating. How's that? We did it finally, Mark. We're good. I meant you. You did it.
Well, I do know, George,
Dating
that the statistics on
Come
YouTube
on,
tell
let's
me
do
that
it.
at least 5% of the audience is female. They're just awfully quiet. They're just lurking.
There
and
will
watching
be more
and
though.
listening.
We will have like free drinks for ladies. Some nights we'll have where only the ladies can talk, whatever they want. Just come here, talk to us.
All right,
Lonely
George.
guys.
You work on that idea.
All
Get
right.
together with Lemansky and the boys, and you guys figure that out. Have a good one.
It's all Lemansky. He thought of it.
Good night, George.
You know.
Okay. Welcome into the voice of college
Hey,
football.
Mark, it's John DeLon.
Hey, John. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Well, I got a few things for you
Sure.
that I wanted to get into.
Absolutely.
I don't want to keep you too long. I know
Appreciate
you're
you being
probably
here.
dying to take a nap or.
Oh, I'm not going to be taking
not a
any
problem. I
naps.
always
I'm just
enjoy
not
it.
going to be talking. But no, appreciate you being here. You are one of the faithful ones. So, of course, I've got time for you.
Okay. The first thing I wanted to, I forget whose super chat it was, but it was a comment about Zach Smith making the allegations, recruiting allegations against the SEC.
Yes.
And my retort to that would be, am I supposed to believe Zach Smith based on the trustworthiness of wife beaters? Or, I mean, let's face it, the man is a walking character flaw. And I'm supposed to believe him just because he made an allegation with no proof?
Well, I'll say this. So I've had Zach Smith on maybe 8 or 10 times. And I will be very transparent and open with everybody here that I have difficulty with that situation because part of me wants to say, I don't want to support anyone who's capable of such things. Okay. Number one. So I don't want to, again, support anyone who's abusing women, children, or doing any such horrible things that I think just about anybody that's a reasonable person can determine, you know, despite all of our differences, we can settle on a few things in life that are horrible or good. All right. On the other hand, in my research and looking through things, I know that based on what I found, those things are not verified. And therefore, I've chosen to have him on because I am all for innocent until proven guilty. And then I'm also for giving second chance.
Whoa.
Hang on just a second. And I'm also for giving.
Okay. Go ahead and finish your point.
And I'm also for, depending on the person's their attitude, their repentance, and so forth, giving people second and third and fourth opportunities, depending on whether they ask for forgiveness and want to make amends.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, there are two domestic violence police reports from when Zach Smith was coaching at Ohio State, where his wife called the police out to his house, or to their house, okay. I should say. There's two of those police reports, and not only that, but the guy spent, I think it was 159 days in jail for violating a civil protection order that his wife had against him. So, and his wife, I mean, granted, this is an allegation, an allegation not supported by fact, but his wife has accused him of being an abusive, pill-popping alcoholic.
Well, see, those are the keys right there. If that's not been, are we going to go on everything that's been alleged of anyone?
I agree, and that's why I prefaced it with it's an unsupported allegation.
And that's the issue
but I mean,
have.
it's out there.
Sure, it's out there. There are a lot of things that are horrible against a lot of people that are out there. And I just want truth and justice. I'm all for truth and justice and for people to be held accountable for heinous acts. Absolutely. I'm the first person that wants that. But I also don't want people who are simply accused. See, this is what we suffer from. And I want to take it away from that particular case to just out in the social media realm, where we see this all the time. When something happens and one particular person is tied to that act way before there's any kind of trial or any type of verdict, that person is just, burned in effigy. And even by these leagues, we're in a situation where I haven't followed it, but Trevor Bauer, who's a baseball pitcher, has been the charges against him in domestic violence have been dismissed, and Major League Baseball is still suspending him. What are they suspending him for?
Well, maybe they know something that the courts don't.
I kind of doubt. You think Major League Baseball knows something that the legal system doesn't know? Then they should be taking that to the legal system. No, it's that these big businesses are playing business and they're playing God, and they just want to be on the right side of it. And I understand that to a certain extent, but we're getting to a place in this country where we are convicting people that aren't being proven to be guilty. And when I say convicted, I mean in the court of public opinion.
Yeah, and no, to be more accurate, in the court of social media.
Yeah,
is what you're really getting at there. Yeah. And I do agree that's messed up. But think about the NFL. How many times has the NFL suspended a player where, like I think it was the Ray Rice situation, where his wife dropped the charges, but the NFL still suspended him anyway because there was just an overwhelming amount of proof that he did something he shouldn't have done.
There was proof. Yeah, we had video evidence of what happened. Absolutely. So they can, in that case, choose to discipline. And I have no issue in that situation that the NFL chose that. I do have an issue with the NFL not giving, once his wife gave him a second chance, and by all accounts, I believe that they're back together, that no one would give him a job after that. I have an issue with that because then we're saying that you could never recover from a situation. But I think that all the correct things should be done by an individual before they think about working again, meaning that they should pay a huge debt to their loved one first and foremost, and then just in general to show remorse, to show correction, to show counseling, to show all sorts of levels of accountability before we even get close to them being a football player again. But that shouldn't, in my eyes, and I don't pretend to have the perfect perspective on this, should damn them for life.
Okay, I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree, at least on certain points of this, and just move on, because I don't think we're really making any ground with each other. The second thing I wanted to get into is I don't think most people are really, really critically thinking about what's really going to happen if the SEC were to break away from the NCAA, because I see 4 dominoes falling. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, these are not far-fetched ideas. They could easily happen. And the first domino I see falling is we're going to expand the number of scholarships to about 125 per team. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to guarantee salaries somewhere between $25,000 and $75,000 a year. And the third thing, and I have to admit, this isn't my point. I stole this from Jeremy Green earlier today, but this point really helped me solidify the whole thing. If these first two dominoes fall like I think they are, or anything even similar to it, how much of the ESPN top 300 gets sucked up by the SEC? I think it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 85% easily. And at this point, the fourth domino to fall will be that teams like Clemson, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, Oregon, the power brokers, they will, at that point, the ADs of those schools will be willing to murder their conference commissioner and crawl over their dead body in order to get to the SEC. And I just like your thoughts on that.
Well, I know that there are theories out there like that, and I've heard similar lines of thinking, and I would hate to see it, don't want to see it, think it would be horrible for the sport. Now, the only question I have in all of that would be the second point of players being paid 25 to 75,000 or whatever the figure would be. If NIL is fully active, why would there need to be some type of formal employment?
Well, I really think that players that get, I mean, I didn't really get into this. I was just kind of trying to gloss over it. But if you want me to get into the second point a little bit more, I think what's actually going to happen is if you're getting NIL money over a certain amount, then you're not going to get anything, or you're only going to get a very limited amount of money from the SEC. And to me, that kind of makes sense. You're making sure everyone gets paid. Like if you're making $100,000 a year, and you're on your own,
Why do we need to make sure everyone gets paid? If everyone has the opportunity outside of the sport itself to get paid, why do we need to
the best players? Because we want the best players.
But if it's not legal, are you talking about legally paying by the rules? Paying players?
They are. When they break away from the NCAA, they will be able to pay players as employees of the SEC. I don't think you can dispute that. That will be perfectly legal.
Well, these players better determine that they want the full, aspects of being an employee.
I'm not quite sure what you're getting at.
Well,
there.
They can be fired too. The scholarship currently protects the player from being fired, but if they're going to be an employee, then I got to think that on a regular basis, you're not going to be too happy with, again, if we take all of college football into account, a third of, roughly a quarter of your roster that you're going to want to turn over and just fire them. And so suddenly that scholarship means nothing.
Well, I mean, that's how the working world works, though, right? Salaries create accountability, and if you're not accountable, bye-bye,
All right, man. Well, I appreciate the call.
Well, I just wanted to get into one more thing, just a quick point, and I'll hang up and let you respond to it. As far as NIL goes and the purpose of it, I think everyone's missing the point. NIL was created to further separate the haves and have-nots, in my opinion. So the breakaway could be more easily justified. Now, I think the breakaway isn't going to be that bad because there will be a second league and people still love college football and they'll still watch it. Like I, for one, will watch it just because I love college football. I don't think it's the most terrible thing in the world. And I'll go ahead and let you go now. Good night.
I appreciate the call. Thank you so much for that. I think if a second league cannot produce a champion that's viewed to be on the same level as the first league, though, then not many people are going to watch that. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Last caller, who's on the line? Hello.
Hey, Marcus.
Yeah.
Dave E.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, Mark. First, I want to send out a prayer for the Texas murders tonight of the children, and hope we all remember them. Okay. Okay. That's so somber. But okay, I just want to give you credit. You did a rundown of the Alabama championship, which I viewed, which I thought was perfect. And all I want to say was, back in 1966, when Alabama had a perfect record, and Michigan State and Notre Dame played to a tie, which Notre Dame actually played for a tie. I think Alabama should have been credited for the 1966 championship. That's all I want to say, Mark. I think that was a perfect analysis.
Well, I appreciate that, sir. Thank you so much for the call. It's great to hear from you tonight. Thanks for watching my video. I appreciate that.
Yes, Mark. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, Dave, have a good night.
You too, sir.
Thank you so much for that. When I produce videos like that, I never in any way believe them to be perfect. Like, I've got the perfect solution. I've judged all the national championships, and this is the way it should be. I'm just doing my best to bring some level of logic to the table to say, let's consider this. 1975 looked like this. These teams had this record. Why was this one voted the national champion? What about these other teams that should be considered equivalent to this team over here? So, yeah, I'm probably not making too much sense at this point. So, Falconer X and others exploring with Ben suggesting I go to bed. I will not be going to bed when I get off here, but fortunately for all of you, you will not have to hear me. I will not be talking anymore because, we should keep these shows to 2 hours is what we should do most likely. All right, everyone, we appreciate you being here. Oh, look at that. Exploring with Ben. Exactly. I'm going to drive home 1 point tonight. We are trying to get an accurate count on who roots for whom that watches here on the main channel. So please email me at markrogerstv@gmail.com. Just let me know who you root for. Other people have been putting in their college football stories in terms of why they root for who they root for and how they fell in love with college football. And I take all that in. So that's phenomenal as well. But would love to know who you root for. And hit me up at markrogerstv@gmail.com. No coffee, Mikey G. None for me. Thank you very much. I don't drink this stuff. And it has nothing to do with health. Just has to do with that awful taste. Appreciate everybody being here. We've got a big Monday or a big Wednesday. See, that's how punch drunk I am. I'm going into Monday. I'm going in reverse instead of Wednesday. Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, Miami. Here at the Voice of College Football. See you then.